What's going on, everybody? This is Derek J407 back to you once again to give you my thoughts on Impact Wrestling's Homecoming pay-per-view live from the Tennessee State Fairgrounds Sports Arena in Nashville, Tennessee, the stomping grounds for what was once known as TNA, Total Nonstop Action Wrestling, way back when, about 15, 16, however many years ago, all these years later, over a decade later, been rechristened Impact Wrestling, and here they put on a really good show, but not without its faults, particularly in the last two matches. One of them makes sense story-wise in terms of the story they were telling in the match, but still a pretty weak finish, and the main event, don't even know what happened. It was pretty lackluster way to end the show, and some other matches, a lot of really good matches, but some of them a little, underwhelming. But one really great match in particular, that might already be a match of the year candidate, along with a lot of the matches that we saw at Wrestle Kingdom just a few days ago. But overall, I thought it was a pretty good show and a pretty good outing for Impact. So let's just run through it. Starting from the beginning, we had an Ultimate X match for the X Division Championship. Of course, the title was vacated by the then champion, Brian Cage, who traded it in for option C so he could get the world title shot against Johnny Impact later on in the show. So the title was up for grabs here in a four-way X Division Ultimate X match between Rich Swann, Jake Crist, Trey Miguel, and Ethan Page. You got four extremely talented guys in there. The Ultimate X rules. You know it's going to be a great match, and that's exactly what these guys put on. It was just wild stuff all throughout. Everyone got a chance to shine, and of course everyone did a bunch of crazy dives. Just too much to go into every single thing that happened. One of the key spots of the match for me was at one point Paige and Crist were on the outside. They were on the floor, and Trey and Swan, they were out there too, but they were on top of one of the beams. So if you've seen Ultimate X match, you know they have these giant beams that hold the wires that create an X up above the ring, and that's what the championship is. You have to climb up, and you have to climb the ropes and all that kind of stuff to get to the championship. So on one of the beam platforms, Swan and Trey were both up there, and Trey shoved Swan off, and then Swan landed on Jay Crist and Ethan Page. So while Trey Miguel was still up there, he did a moonsault right off onto everyone else. So I thought that was one of the really cool spots of the match. And of course there were a bunch of other crazy stuff, a lot of crazy dives, all that kind of stuff. But it came down coincidentally to Rich Swann and Trey, and one man, Swan, was on one side, Trey was on the other. They both, tried to climb up the beam, tried to climb the rope, but it was Swan who was the faster of the two. And once he got to the center where the championship was, the championship kind of fell, and he kind of just grabbed it with his legs and feet. So I'm not sure. I don't think that was the planned finish. It didn't really look planned, and I'm not sure if that means maybe Trey was supposed to win and this was an accident, or Rich Swann was the person who was supposed to win the match, but it just didn't go down the exact way it was supposed to. Either way, the match ended there. Pretty kind of, that didn't really feel like it was supposed to go that way kind of finish, but hey, it was still good. Rich Swann is the new X Division champion, so yeah, really good way to open the show. Up next, we got Knockouts tag team action. We got the team of Kiera Hogan and Jordan Grace taking on Su Yung and Dark Alley. So if you've been following along with this story, ever since Bound for Glory, when Alley went down to the Undead Realm to fight off Su Yung. She, while down there, got possessed pretty much, and now in recent months she's become like a servant of Su Yung, so to speak. So she's been wearing this makeup on the bottom half of her face. It's just been doing a bunch of dastardly shit as Su Young's right-hand woman, pretty much. So and has turned her back on her friend like Kiera Hogan. So we got this match here. It was a pretty basic tag team match, nothing overly special. Jordynne Grace, a very powerful woman, very muscular and broad, but very great in the ring. And she got to showcase a little bit of her strength here. At one point, she had both Su Yung and Ali up for different slams. She had Ali in position for a power slam, and Kiera Hogan helped put Su Yung on top of her for a power bomb position, and she slammed both of them at the same time. So I thought that was pretty cool. But the finish came when Ali grabbed, I think she got it from Su Yung. She got the bloody glove. It's not real bloody glove, and we don't need to talk about blood and the women with that indie match this weekend with the bloody tampon spot. Let's not go into that. They're free to do whatever they want to do, but I thought it was gross, so I'll just give my thoughts on it right there. But yeah, this wasn't real blood, and I don't think that was either, but still, she put on the bloody glove, put the mandible claw on Kiera Hogan, and she passed out to it. So the heels win. After the match, they started to beat her down, and then out comes Su Young's undead bridesmaids with a coffin. They wheel it out there to put Kiera Hogan in it, but once they open the coffin up, out pops Rosemary. We haven't seen Rosemary in the arena in quite a while. We did see her in that skit at Bound for Glory a few months ago with Ali and all of them. She was down there in that undead realm, so she has clearly escaped. She came out, she started to beat up on the bridesmaids, and she kind of tossed Su Yung into them. She got in the ring, went face to face with Ali, kind of tapped her on the head really quick, and Ali kind of scurried out of there. She just looked confused and in a daze and all that kind of stuff. So I think this will be the rebirth of regular Ali now that her best friend is back, and I'm sure it'll probably lead to a match first, but I'm sure eventually she'll snap out of it and come back to reality. So and I did not intend on that inadvertent Eminem lyric, but that's what happened. But yeah, basic stuff there. Up next, we had Moose and Eddie Edwards in a Falls Count Anywhere match. This feud has been going on for a few months, and it got to the point where Eddie Edwards was driven so crazy by revenge on Moose that it ended up leading him to being checked into basically an insane asylum with Raven, of all people. Quote the Raven, nevermore. That Raven, who gave him a card that allowed him to go wherever he wanted, and he returned to the Impact Zone and started to beat up on Moose, and that's how we got here. So this was it was a fight. Moose was beating Eddie Edwards' ass for a good chunk of it, to the point where Eddie ended up getting busted open. But this was about Eddie Edwards finally getting his revenge over Moose, and that's ultimately what he did. There was one point where the two were just trading chops to the chest. They were both just kind of getting fired up over him, and then it led to Moose headbutting Eddie Edwards back into the ropes. So Moose goes, he Irish whips off the other side of the ropes, and when he comes charging at Eddie, he gets backdropped over the top rope, and he lands on a guardrail that Moose set up earlier in the match. He set up a guardrail and set it up between some steel steps and the ring apron, and Moose just kind of landed and crashed right onto that. And very brutal spot. Then Eddie got his friend Kenny, the kendo stick that he's become accustomed to using. I think it was the one that was given to him by Tommy Dreamer. many moons ago. So he used that. He started to beat Moose down with it. And out of nowhere came his wife, Alicia Edwards. She took the stick from him, started to yell at him, saying like enough. And I'm thinking, oh God, please don't hit him with the stick and join up with Moose. Please don't do that. We don't need to see this storyline go that goofy route. But it did not go that goofy route. She instead took the stick because she wanted to use it herself. So she got a few swings in on Moose and started to beat him down a little bit. Then she gave the stick back to Eddie. He got one final swing on it, and then he hit an implant DDT and got the win. So Eddie Edwards gets this big win over Moose. I assume that is the finale. That's the final stamp on this feud, this rivalry. I don't know where either man goes from here, but this just came off as a definitive end. He reunited with his wife. They seemed to be in solidarity there, so that just seemed like the end to me. But a good fight it was good for what it was. Like I said, that guardrail spot was pretty brutal because that just looks like it sucked to get landed on that thing from such a great height like Moose did. So yeah, but that's that. Up next, Sami Callihan taking on Willie Mack. Sami had one of the Christ boys in his corner, another member of OVE. I think it was Dave Christ, Jay Christ was in the Ultimate X. It was Dave Christ here. Sami Callihan coming off of being named the Wrestler of the Year in the Impact Wrestling Awards and one half of the Best Match of the Year in their awards. That match he had with Pentagon Jr., I think it was a street fight or last man stand? I forgot what it was. It was some stipulation match all the way back at a Slammiversary. So Sami Callihan coming off with some momentum there. So he and Willie Mack had a pretty basic match. Sami, Dave Christ was out there. He was providing, distractions and all that kind of stuff. But Willie Mack, he had some hope spots in there. There was one point where Callihan hit a Death Valley driver from the top rope, and when he went to cover Willie Mack, Mack kicked out of at one. So that was pretty cool. And then he hit Callihan, hit this really sick wicked lariat. But again, Willie kicked out of one. But it wasn't enough to fire him back up to continue because he got one more huge lariat on Willie Mack that kind of just flipped him inside out. Hit him with a pile driver and got the win. So Sami Callihan gets the big win on the homecoming show. Nothing much to it other than that. Next up, Eli Drake taking on Abyss. Eli Drake is on a mission to eradicate anything having to do with hardcore in Impact Wrestling. So he's taking on Abyss in Abyss's playground, a Monsters Ball match. I feel like this whole story of someone in Impact or TNA or whatever you want to call it on a mission to do away with anything having to do with hardcore and all that kind of stuff. I feel like we've been down this road before, and it's always done to make the new guy look stronger, and I guess that's what was done here. There was a staple gun used early on in the match. Abyss used it on Eli Drake's chest, which I have no use for staple guns. Staple guns and glass are two things that I have no use for in wrestling. I know there's a place for them. I know some people get a kick out of that. And light tubes. Add light tubes to that. I hate that shit. Probably light tubes over glass. I think glass I can handle a lot more than light tubes. But yeah, that's just how I feel about it. At one point, Drake had Abyss set up into the ropes, had him seated in the ropes, kind of positioned more to the outside of the ring, and he lunged at him with a cookie sheet, this big metal pan. He lunged right at him, collided right into Abyss's face. Abyss fell back through two tables that were set up side by side on the outside of the ring, and Eli Drake even kind of, with his momentum, it carried him through the ropes, and I think he landed through a table too, so it was a brutal spot for both men. Eventually, Abyss, he recovered, and he brought out the thumbtacks, and he managed to get Eli Drake in position to chokeslam him on the thumbtacks, but Drake slipped out of it. Then he scooped up a handful of attacks, and he was about to throw them at Abyss, but Abyss ended up ducking, and it got the ref. And it made you believe that one of the attacks got him in the eye, so he was kind of preoccupied there. Abyss ended up hitting Eli Drake with the black hole slam, but of course the referee wasn't there to see it, so he couldn't count it. But yeah, a little bit later on, Abyss brought out Janice, the wooden board with the nails sticking out of it, but it really didn't get put to great use. But he did end up choke slamming Eli Drake onto the thumbtacks, so I thought that was pretty brutal. They were sticking out of his back. But Eli Drake eventually took control. He started to beat him down with chairs and a paddleboard and all that kind of stuff. He tried to use a zip tie, and he was having a bitch of a time trying to zip tie his hands, but Abyss got those big, thick wrists and stuff like that, so it couldn't stick around there, so they just kind of gave up on that. So he just beat him down with a bunch of chairs and a paddleboard and ended up getting the win. So the right outcome for this match, Abyss is a Hall of Famer. He's practically retired, or at least close to it. He should not be beating Eli Drake. And so the correct finish here. But the hardcore stuff, I don't really need it. The Abysses and Tommy Dreamers and all that kind of stuff, I don't really need that anymore in Impact or TNA or whatever the hell you want to call it. Up next, we got the match that I was looking forward to the most. The Impact Tag Team Championship match, LAX, represented by Santana and Ortiz, the longest reigning Tag Team Champions in Impact history, defending the titles against the Lucha Brothers, Pentagon Jr. and Fenix. This match was excellent. I loved this match. This was great. Just bell to bell, some awesome action. I tried to write down everything that happened, and I don't even think I caught all of it, but so much cool stuff. There was one point, Santana and Ortiz were on the outside. Pentagon was too. They were seated kind of behind him, but he was on the outside. So Fenix dives through the ropes, and he collides into Pentagon, who catches him, and then kind of bellies him over his head and has him land on Ortiz and Santana. That was great. At one point, Pentagon hit a code breaker on Ortiz, but instead of him kind of bouncing off, he kind of held him down onto his knees so Fenix could come in and stomp on his back. So I thought that was really cool. Eventually LAX, they got the upper hand. They started to beat down Pentagon, and I thought this set up a really cool move where Ortiz did a dive onto Pentagon, and when he was going for the cover, he was covering him, and Fenix, out of nowhere, stomps on Ortiz's back and kind of bounces off of there and hits a Canadian destroyer or Mexican destroyer on Santana. Brilliant move. Brilliant way to break up the pin. Then Pentagon and Fenix, they hit their Fear Factor move. I think it's like the pile driver foot stomp combo kind of thing. They hit it on Santana, but Ortiz, he ended up kind of pushing Fenix into Pentagon, who was doing the covering, so that kind of broke it up. A little bit later, Santana and Ortiz, they did their powerbomb blockbuster combo, and out of nowhere, Fenix came in to break it up. They did it on Pentagon, and Fenix broke it up with a crazy drop kick, but the finishing sequence was amazing. Ortiz hit a diving codebreaker onto Fenix. Then Santana gave him a super kick, and then both of them hit him with a reverse suplex right smack dab in the middle of the ring, and they got the pin and they got the win. So the longest reigning tag team champions remain the tag team champions. Conan, who is the manager and the founder of LAX, he is the manager, of course, of Santana and Ortiz, but he also has a close relationship with Fenix and Pentagon. So he just didn't want any part of this. He stayed in the back. He didn't want to get involved. He wanted to let those guys go out there and do their thing. So he came out after the match, praised them for having a great match, praised them for having it in a place like Nashville, and all that kind of stuff, saying that he was wrong, because leading up to the match he was saying this is not something that we need to do right now. at least in terms of LAX having this match at this time with these guys, but he said he was wrong, and they went out there and had a great match, and that they did. And I would not mind seeing these four do it again. Santana and Ortiz, LAX, they're a pretty underrated tag team right now. Impact don't have a whole lot of buzz, so you don't really get to hear about them all that much, but they are a great tag team. Of course, all of us from Lucha Underground, we know how good Fenix and Pentagon are separately because they're never together on that show. So seeing them here together, in Impact, they've just been killing it. And I wouldn't have minded seeing them win the tag team titles, but I just feel like they're probably a little better off going after singles gold, but that's just me. But yeah, I would not mind seeing this match again. Let's do it again. Up next, we had Tessa Blanchard defending the Knockouts Championship against Taya Valkyrie. Hall of Famer Gail Kim was made the special referee for this match when Impact officials decided that she was the only person who could really officiate a match like this. And her being the referee definitely played a huge part in this match because it led directly to the outcome. So the match was good between Taya and Tessa. Their match at Bound for Glory was much better than this one, but mainly because this one was plagued by the whole gimmick of Gail Kim as the referee. Because throughout the entire match, there was always tension between Gail Kim and Tessa Blanchard. Tessa Blanchard going into this match didn't want her as the referee at all. So anytime she was hitting big moves on Taya and it would only be good for a 2 count, she got in Gail Kim's face, was yelling at her. Eventually it led to her starting to push her and all that kind of stuff. At one point, she got inadvertently, Gail Kim that is, got inadvertently taken down with a forearm shot from Tessa. So with her down, she hits her buzzsaw DDT move, but of course, there's no one there to count it. So she goes to the outside, grabs the championship belt, threatens to use it, but by that point, Gail Kim was back up. She tried to pull it away from her, so it was a brief tug of war, and Tessa let go, and Gail kind of went back and accidentally hit Taya with the belt and knocked her down. Tessa went over to pin her. Gail Kim reluctantly counted the fall, but it was only a near fall because she managed to kick out at 2. And this led to Tessa and Gail Kim getting each other's faces again. Tessa eventually started to shove Gail Kim, that is. Then Gail shoved back and led to Ty getting a roll-up, but it was only good for a 2 count. But then once again, Tessa got in Gail Kim's face, shoved her again, and this time, Gail Kim hit her with her finishing move, the Eat Defeat. And that led to Taya hitting her with the Road to Valhalla and got the win. So Taya Valkyrie is the new Knockouts champion. Tessa Blanchard gets screwed by Gail Kim. The commentators were telling the story that, you kept pushing her, and you kept pushing her buttons, and that was what's going to happen. But it's like, hey, she was the referee. She didn't need to do all that. So, this is one of the matches I was alluding to earlier. It's like, I get, if there's a story, but I wasn't the biggest fan of, the referee literally attack. Like, if it wanted to end on the accidental, or even on the push, like pushing her and then going into the roll-up, maybe that would have been bad too, but I don't know. I don't think you need to have her blatantly screw over Tessa Blanchard, but that's clearly the story they're going to go with. It will probably lead to a Gail Kim Tessa Blanchard match, which isn't the worst thing in the world. But yeah, fine match, just kind of plagued with the gimmick stuff. The main event was up next, but before they went to the main event, they did mention that that Impact, the TV show, will be moving this Friday to the Pursuit channel, a channel that I'm sure not many people have, if anyone at all has it. It's a pretty forgotten about channel in that not a lot of people get access to it. But they remedied that by making this announcement that they will be on that channel, but simultaneously when Impact airs every Friday night at its designated time slot, while airing on Pursuit channel, it will also be streaming live on Twitch. So I think that's a smart idea. I remember they had a show on Twitch, I think it was last year. It was a Impact versus Lucha Underground Super Show kind of deal. WrestleMania weekend, I think it was the same night as the Hall of Fame. Wish I had gone to that show instead of the Hall of Fame, but that's a different story. But So yeah, it was either last year. Yeah, I think it was last year, either last year or the year before, but it was one of those years. But yeah, so it makes sense, and it gives people more access to it. So that's perfectly fine with me. And then we get to the main event, that being Johnny Impact and Brian Cage for the Impact World Championship. A pretty damn good main event. I've seen these two wrestle in Lucha Underground before, so I knew what to expect, and they did not disappoint. They had a really good match. Of course, Cage is a strong motherfucker, so he was very powerful in there, but of course he is also very quick and can do very unique dive-like moves, so he put all that on display in this match. At one point, Cage hit an F5 on Johnny Impact. Impact went for the Starship Pain, but when he went up for it, Cage kind of pulled his feet down and pulled him back, and then he got him up for the F5 and hit it. So it looked effective, but it was only good for a 2 count. Eventually Johnny Impact did hit the Starship Pain, but that also was only good for a 2 count. This led to Impact pulling Cage up to the top turnbuckle with him, and he hit a Spanish fly off of the top rope right down to the mat. It's a beautiful move. Fortunately, it's hardly ever used to finish off matches, and this one was no exception because it was only good for a near fall. There was one point where Impact kind of kicked Cage off of the top turnbuckle onto the outside, and when he landed, he kind of landed on the guardrail over by the fans, and he kind of knocked into 2 guys who I originally didn't really know who they were, but I forgot. They did mention earlier in the show that they were at least one of them was the winner of the recent season of Survivor, and I guess the other one, I don't know if both of them were, whatever, they were celebrities that I use in quotation marks. So they were mad, and Cage ended up shoving one of them away, and the referee went out there to kind of, calm them down. But back in the ring, I think it was Mundo who laid out Cage with a move, or vice versa, but the referee, of course, wasn't there to cover it. The finish was a little wonky because both of them were in the ropes, and they kind of dove off the ropes, but it was Impact who kind of fell onto Cage, and I don't know if Cage's shoulder was up, I couldn't really tell, but Cage ended up losing, and Impact retained the championship. But it was one of those finishes where it was like, wait, what just happened? It was like one of those screwy finishes. So again, maybe another person has the right to be saying they got screwed, because right afterwards, Cage, he grabbed the championship belt, he looked pissed, he just kind of threw it right at the side of Johnny Impact. So I don't know if this is supposed to be Austin Aries like, but it came off rather lame to me. It was especially with this being the main event, and that's how you kind of end it. And this is the second pay-per-view in a row where you have the finish of your main event kind of questionable and up in the air, and just not really a strong way to finish. I mean, I was shocked that Cage didn't win. I thought Cage was going to win the title, but that's not what happened. I think the person who's going to take that title from Johnny Impact came right after the match. So Taya came out, both the married couple, they're both champions. They went up the ramp, they stopped on the stage, and out came Killer Kross. We saw Killer Kross earlier in the night cutting a promo backstage, basically setting his sights on Johnny Impact, and he came out there, beat Johnny down, knocked him down the entrance ramp back by ringside. Taya was throwing punches at him, and he ended up getting Taya in position for a power bomb, and ended up power bombing her off of the stage onto some fans in the crowd. Clearly plants, but still brutal. And Killer Kross power bombed Johnny Impact's wife, so that definitely sets up a big match for these two down the line, and I assume Killer Kross will be the one to take the championship from Johnny Impact. But yeah, the finish of the main event match itself was not great. This stuff was good. Him powerbombing Taya, I thought was very effective. But the main event itself, the match ending that way was pretty weak, followed by the women's match, which I thought had a weak finish, and a few of the other matches on the show were weak, but that tag team championship match was excellent. The Ultimate X match was a really great opener. So I think overall, and the main event itself was good, and the women's match was really good. So I think overall, good show, very good show. Not the best from Impact. Kind of showing some TNA moments there, some of the laughable TNA moments, but overall, thought it was a fine show. So, that's it for me. Guess I'll talk to all of you guys some other time. So, see you later.